Hey, what's going on, sports fans? You know who's back. It is me, Rudy, the host of Browns Only. And we're back to bring you another fantastic edition and episode of the show. By now, you know, we are going into week one of the preseason. So the Browns have their first game coming up. It's Thursday now, August what? 12th, 13th, even? Yeah, it's the 13th of August already. And so we have a slate of preseason games coming to you. Now, the Browns play on Saturday, the 15th, which will be their first game against the Bears. And we did just find out today that Deshaun Watson would be the starting quarterback for that opener for the Browns, which, I mean, it did almost seem like it came in the dead of the night. The quarterback competition has been, you can say, pretty even. It looks like Shador's doing a little bit better overall. That's what it looks like. But it seemed like all along it might have been favored for Deshaun to get the first start against Chicago, and Shador will be starting the second game against Buffalo. Don't forget, they have the inter squad practices. We'll come back to this topic a little more toward the end of the show because we'll talk about a kerfuffle that happened this past Saturday. Not the Saturday, obviously, again, that the Browns' first game will be on the 15th, but this would have been on the 8th. We'll go back in time, look at that. But first, we'll go into some news from around the NFL. First, we know for the Browns, again, Deshaun Watson will be starting the preseason opener after the Browns take on the Chicago Bears. Plenty of other preseason action. We'll get to that full slate in just a second, but let's talk about some transactions that's the Browns made because of injuries, some, but in preparation for the matchup against the Bears. They did sign another corner and cornerback Jaden Lucas, who I believe was an undrafted free agent. I believe he was out of Clemson, and he has been getting run with the Browns in the offseason OTAs already. So that's very interesting. The Browns also did make a flurry or a fluster of signings and releases, namely Browns offensive lineman Garrett Conley has been brought back. He was with us a little bit last year, a massive offensive lineman. I think he is over 350 pounds and almost 6'7". The Browns did also waive linebacker Reed Kirko, who was an undrafted free agent out of West Virginia and Ohio State. Jamari Thrash, basically not waived, but he has an injury settlement where he'll be out for the season. Offensive guard Kendrick Perkins was put on IR. So he will likely not play this year. Damari Mathis was given an injury settlement. The cornerback that was recently signed by the Browns we covered on the show. And undrafted agent TJ Harden was waived by the Browns at some point. And he did go on to sign with Seattle. Now, also, the Browns did sign a tight end in Daquan Wright, an undrafted free agent out of Ole Miss and Virginia Tech. I think part of that is because of what's going on with Joe Royer. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. And then also the Browns did sign cornerback Jeremiah McClendon. So that was just another signing that they made today. Now, last week, the Browns lost with injury, getting carted off Zach Zinter. We know that he's dealt with injury throughout his short career so far, just like DeJuan Jones, just like Luke Wimpler. All those guys are going to probably fight for one or two of the last roster spots for the offensive line. We'll talk about the offensive line briefly, more starters of the offensive line a little bit toward the end of the show, and some news from around the league. Then running back Jahmyr Gibbs for the Detroit Lions signed a 3-year, $67.5 million extension. We got Quinnen Williams, the defensive end, who is the brother of Quincy Williams, starting linebacker for the Browns. We'll talk about the Browns starting linebacker position a little bit toward the end of the show. But Quinnen Williams, the outstanding star defensive tackle for the Cowboys, did sign an $105.9 million extension with the Cowboys, and 49ers signed former Raider running back Zamir White Another former Raider who got signed was Darren Waller. Don't forget he played in Miami last year. The former Raider as well does sign with Carolina. Kyler Murray is named as the starter for Minnesota for week 1 of the regular season. So he has beat out J.J. McCarthy in that job. And then also, Pittsburgh picks up linebacker Elandon Roberts, who's formerly a Raider as well. Teddy Bridgewater retires, the longtime quarterback. And in a corresponding move, then the Lions, after he did retire from the Lions for the second year in a row in the preseason, the Lions go out and sign Josh Dobbs. All right. So we'll jump back into some Browns news, a couple of things that I think is interesting going into the Browns game is that on the roster or the depth chart, the starters were named as either Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders. That's very interesting. They weren't named as, first string, second string. Another interesting starting spot or starter on the Browns roster was Easton Macarena-Arnold, who's basically like the third linebacker, right? But we know that the Browns usually only run with 2 linebackers anyway, because they'll usually use a nickel. Probably Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, who's been looking good in camp. A lot of standouts defensively at camp. A lot of the defensive line has been missing, whether it's just precautionary, like a Mason Graham or Michael Hall Jr., who should be returning soon. I know there's concerns about both of those guys, but both of them look to be able to play. Malik Collins is even more of a question mark. We talked about that on so many shows already related to the Browns, the concern of the depth of the defensive line and the offensive line. But we'll not spend too much time with that today, but I did want to touch on the preseason slate. We already know the Hall of Fame game took place last Thursday, so a week ago, last week, of course, in Canton every year. And Arizona did play. No, I forgot who Arizona played that fast. That game was just last week. It was actually a pretty entertaining game. It was Arizona and Carolina, and we talked about Carolina just getting Darren Waller, of course. And I believe Carolina came out with the victory with the late touchdown by Haynes King in that one. So Haynes King was pretty much the star of that game. That's what you can look for in the preseason to see which team's backups can shine the most, right? Tonight at 7 o'clock, got a slate of games. Detroit going to Cincinnati. So the Lions and the Bears right in Cincinnati. Green Bay and Pittsburgh tomorrow night at 7 as well. That one will be on NFL Network. In Indianapolis at New England is on slate for tomorrow night at 7:30. Arizona, they'll play their second game in the preseason. Remember, they was just the Hall of Fame game against playing Carolina. I remember this time. Las Vegas is who they play. So they'll be going up against the Raiders. That one will be on some ESPN streams. The Chargers and the Texans at 8 o'clock, and then Tennessee and San Francisco will be on NFL Network as the second on their slate of a doubleheader on Friday then. So this is August 14th. You got Denver at Atlanta at 7. You got Tampa at the New York Jets at 7. Then you got Miami at Washington at 7. Finally, on Saturday, we know that the Browns play on Saturday. They play at 1. Carolina also plays Buffalo at 1. Minnesota plays the Giants at 1. And finally, we got some 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 8 o'clock games on Saturday. The Rams play the Chiefs at 4 on NFL Network. 1 o'clock game on NFL Network on Saturday is the Browns and the Bears. Of course, that's the matchup that we want to see. Deshaun Watson will be starting in that one. Don't know if Shedeur will be playing in that one. Again, we know he'll be starting week 2 against Buffalo. May see a little bit of time, may see a quarter in that one. But also, Jacksonville will be playing New Orleans at 4, along with if I didn't mention the Rams and the Chiefs. That's actually a pretty good matchup for the preseason, even though we, again, know that it will be backups. But at 4 o'clock on NFL Network on Saturday, if you are channel surfing, that's a good-ass game to watch, even if it's preseason backups and guys that will be former or future UPS truckers. But Philadelphia, Baltimore will be on at 7, and then Dallas at Seattle will be on NFL Network. the last of a triple header on Saturday, Dallas and Seattle. Actually, a pretty solid damn matchup as well. Now, a couple more topics we want to touch on before we get out of here on this show. We've actually made some very good time. We talked about Easton Macarenas Arnold being the third linebacker who's listed as a starter. And we figured that would be something that might happen, something that was interesting. Because after, of course, Quincy Williams, we talked about earlier in the show, Carson Schlesinger, who has not been practicing much because he's one of the more valuable pieces on the team. And what do you really need to see from Carson Schlesinger in the preseason? Easton Macarenas Arnold was like the next guy up, other than like a Justin Jefferson, for example. Guys like Nathaniel Watson, Winston Reed will also be battling for that spot in that position. But Easton Macarenas Arnold was the guy who was taking the most snaps, if you would, in camp and starting a lot of times out there on the field at camp. Right. So one of the questions I wanted to pose before we got out of here on the show was, what is Joe Royer's personal issue that's keeping him off the field, and will he return to the field this year? Now, don't want to speculate, but I will. I don't care. I'm gonna go ahead because a lot of people been skirting around this. Heard his name mentioned a lot in the media. Now, there was, things on social media related to his relationships with underage females. I don't know if it's related to that, so I'm not really speculating or connecting the dots. I don't know if it's another personal issue. I don't know if it's really just the Browns saying it's a personal issue, but they're like, we don't want a guy like this on our team. We didn't know this before we drafted him. We'll find out how that plays out. But one thing is for sure, that does somewhat hurt the depth of the Browns at the tight end position. We talked about it enough on the show already and named the names, what that position is looking like. But the question will be, will the Browns look to go out and try to address outside? Don't forget, they also drafted, along with Royer, Carson Ryan in the 7th round. But I think one thing that is affecting the depth of the tight end / fullback position right now is the fact that the fullback that they signed, Michael Burton, right now he's not practicing as well. So I think that's kind of limiting them from all their personnel formations, basically, right? With some of the 2 running back formations. But we'll move right along because we don't know what's going on with Joe Royer, and hopefully we'll find out as the preseason goes along and see what kind of designation that the Browns may need to put on him. I don't think they'll outright cut him, being a draft pick of the team just this year, right? Even if it's something that won't allow him to play this year, they probably will try to retain his rights. But the next thing is, the Browns did say to Todd Monken here, actually said that he figured that he had the Browns starting offensive line all figured out already in terms of every position, right? So we know Fano's at left tackle. We know that likely Zion Johnson's going to be starting at left guard. We now know that Elton Jenkins is likely going to be starting at center. But the position that is the mystery position is right guard. Monken said that he's not exactly sure who's going to start at right guard. We know that KT Levinston is in the running for that position. We know that Luke Wimpler is in the running for that position. Most likely it'll be Tevin Jenkins that'll be slotted in as a starter at that position. Then, of course, Titus Howard rounding out the O-line at the right tackle position. Did want to make a note of that because that is somewhat contrary to what had priorly been reported or speculated. We wasn't sure if maybe Parker Brailsford might start at that center position, but he hasn't been practicing, or Luke Wimpler potentially starting at the center position to free up Elton Jenkins to play his more natural position of guard. But that doesn't seem like what's going down. Seemed like Elton Jenkins was brought in here to be a center, even though he preferred to be a guard, and now he's going to be a center. So even though that's not his preferred position, that is a position he played in Green Bay before he got hurt. That's not a position that he was an all-pro at in Green Bay that he would probably prefer to play, which is guard. But at the end of the day, the Browns going to play him where they need him. And he said he's open to playing wherever he's most needed. That's where he's going to be best at. So what we want to talk about just before we get out of here is past Saturday. Again, we mentioned Saturday, I believe it was the 8th. It was Shador's day to start or go with the – it's not start, excuse me. It was Shador's day to take the snaps with the number ones at practice. Monken said at the press conference that Shador will go with the ones today. as scheduled. They come out to the practice field about, I don't know, less than 30 minutes later. And it is not the case that Shador is with the ones. It was actually Deshaun who took all the first team snaps with the ones. And so that led to widespread speculation that the Browns QB competition had already been decided. What Monken came and said on Monday was that he does not have to explain everything to the media and that he changed his mind at the last second to give Deshaun the first team snaps because he was informed by his staff that Shador had more snaps in pads. Remember, they had just started being in pads earlier that week, and that to even it out, Deshaun should get the first team reps. Shador split that day's second team reps with Dylan. He also did have a solid performance that day, him being Shador, and Derek Deshaun had a lot of reps, but he did not play great, played decent. He's pretty much been how he's been all through camp, Derek, where he's had some accuracy, some great throws, but then also a lot of inaccuracies. Don't let the people out there fool you. I just want to throw in this last thing about this QB competition. I think part of that was done because Monken knew that he wanted to start Watson first in the preseason games. And I know that Monken has come out and said since then that he has not decided on who his starting QB is going to be. But make no mistake, a lot of times the completions and attempts for Shador and Derek Deshaun will look very similar. But we do see more highlight throws, more tightly contested, highly contested, tight window throws from Shador with less interceptions. Make no mistake, Shador is winning this battle. You're hearing different things coming out of Berea, right? But the truth is that Shador is slightly winning this battle. Derek's got a chance to still play himself into being the starter week one, but not because he's outplaying Shador in this competition. I don't want you to think that, folks. I don't want you to be misled because some will mislead you. And again, I can only tell you with what I see from my eyes. There was a pass that Shador threw today to Isaiah Bond that Isaiah Bond dove for it on the left sideline, and it was so on point, and you could just see. Now, don't get me wrong, Derek has a little bit of connection with Isaiah Bond as well. I think this team is going to be a lot better than what people think. I'm not sure if there was really anything too much I wanted to touch on before I got out of here on this show. That was one of the big things I wanted to touch on was just the fact that I know that a lot of people were hung up on the competition being over between Shador and Deshaun and whether it was even really a competition to begin with, because Shador's been looking really good. And some people were even saying, hey, it seems like that as soon as Shador was really starting to like go 80% for his completion, 21 for 25 is a stat line you'll see from him sometimes, even on limited reps. And it seems like he was just really getting hot. And they said, whoa, then that's when Saturday happened, really. And Derek started getting more reps. But I will tell you that it's no reason for alarm. It's not that Derek won't get preferential treatment somewhat as being the veteran. I don't mean that he's being given maybe more than he's earned, right? But just the fact that maybe there is a little bit more of a comfortability with the veteran. But what Derek or Deshaun's getting is an opportunity to play himself in or out of the position. He has not played himself out of it yet, but he also has to hold up in the preseason. He also has to be judicious with the football against the Bears, which is a very stingy, hungry defense. Shador did see the Bills last year toward the end of the year. It was like before the Bengals game and before the Steelers game at the end of the year. So, I mean, you want to say like the 15th game of the year. Shador played admirably in that game against the Bills. He did have, untimely interceptions in that one. But He also overall played very well. That's the game that he dealt with the finger injury. But again, overall played very well in that one. And that game came down to the wire. You could say he played basically as good as Josh Allen in that one, for some that will idolize and say Josh Allen is the bar, right? Well, I guess why is it that Shador played blow for blow with them in that one with a lot less talent, specifically even at the running back position at that point. Quinshawn Judkins, at the very least, did not play that whole game. In any event, right? We'll have Quinshawn Judkins, we'll have Harold Fannin Jr. Of course, one of, I think, the more better emerging tight ends in the game. Not really want to run through the whole roster on this episode. We did touch on, again, the right guard position to see how that'll be filled, whether it's Tevin Jenkins, whether eventually Luke Wimpler comes in, or Parker Brailsford works his way to get more comfortable at center. We talked about the controversy Saturday with Deshaun getting the snaps, how he'll be the starter this upcoming Saturday in the Bears game. We went through the slate of Thursday games that'll be coming on tonight in week 1 of the preseason, even the Hall of Fame game, and touched on how the Panthers came away with the victory in the preseason Hall of Fame game opener. And football's here, folks. That's basically what we're doing. So as the Browns prepare for this first game against the Bears, I don't want you to get caught up in what you're hearing, but use your eyes to check out a little bit of the game if you can and see what you think of for yourself, right? You'll get an opportunity to see some of the young guys for the Browns who will fight to make the roster. You may even see, both of those rookie receivers. Possible, right? I would say that's quite possible. It's quite possible that you'll see a little bit of Shador. You definitely see some Dylan, but we are still for sure, knowing that it's perfect timing. It will be, again, not only for the Bills preseason game, but then also the inter-squad practices against the Bills. So this is Rudy with Browns Only signing off. Glad to bring you another fantastic episode of the show. Was really looking forward to bringing you this episode. There was a lot of news to bring you around the league, including the Browns signing like tight end Daquan Wright, like I mentioned, and Jaden Lucas. So adding to the depth there on the roster and seeing if these young guys can help the Browns fight and bounce back to be one of the younger emerging teams this year to compete for the Lombardi Trophy. Maybe that's a little presumptuous, but we are going to be following and watching the Browns all year, letting you know what's going on. So one thing's for sure, go Browns! And yeah, it's always glad to bring you this Browns news. I'm going to sign off. Thank you again for joining me. This show is brought to you on behalf of Big Rube Promotions and Entertainment. Thank you so much again for joining us. Catch you on the next episode. And it is time for some football. Let's play. Let's watch. Enjoy.